I'm Becca, I'm 28, and I grew up in Los Angeles. Um, let's see a little bit about my childhood, what it was like. I had a pretty good childhood. I went to good schools. I did fun activities as a kid. And I think about this a lot. Like, why did I start getting into drugs? Or what made me really get into drugs? And when I think about it, I don't really know. I was kind of a rebellious child, you could say, but I didn't really get into too much trouble. Um, One of the things that I remember is when someone told me I couldn't do something, I really wanted to do it. And I always knew that drugs were bad. I was always taught as a child that drugs were bad. Cigarettes were bad, alcohol was bad, drugs were bad, boys were bad. No, I'm just kidding. But in all reality, when I heard that we weren't supposed to do something, it obviously made me want to try it. So around 7th grade, I went to a new school. I met new kids. Kids weren't really into drugs and alcohol at this school, but I had friends from another school that were. And alcohol was sort of the first thing that came into the picture. I don't really remember the first time I got drunk, honestly. And I don't really remember the first time I smoked a joint, but it was somewhere around 8th grade. And I liked it. I liked being out of control. I liked being free of my thoughts, my emotions, my stress. I don't really know what you're stressed about in 8th grade, but we fight with our parents. We are under pressure at school. It's a hard time. Puberty, transforming, all that kind of stuff. So I always played sports, and that's kind of what kept me out of trouble most of the time, was that I was always at practice or training with a coach. I loved sports, and I was good at them, and so I kept playing them for a long time. When I went to my new school, I met new people, and one of the girls that was older than me became my best friend. She drove me to school every day, and she started to smoke weed, and I thought that she was really cool, so I started to smoke weed with her. One thing led to another. I started drinking, smoking weed more, and by 10th grade, I was doing cocaine. That, for me, was kind of the coolest thing, I thought. I had always been medicated. I took Ritalin and Adderall and things to help me with ADD for a long time, and that kind of started me on this trail of feeling like, okay, I must have a disability if I need to take a pill to help me focus. And when I did cocaine, it was like a good Adderall. I wasn't agitated. I just felt good, and I could stay up, and I could get all my work done, and I felt really good, and I started to lose weight. And for a girl in LA, I think that that's a major thing. We're very body conscious. My school was really competitive, both academically and socially. My physical image became really important to me. So, cocaine sort of was the pinnacle of my story through 11th grade, and then came senior year, and I was doing well. I was getting recruited for soccer to colleges. I was varsity captain. There were a lot of things that were happening senior year that were really positive. But that best friend that I spoke about earlier, who was a year older than me, graduated, and I was sort of lonely and sort of had a hard time telling the truth. And I started to get in trouble and be told that I couldn't go out. So I started to sneak out and ditch school and do drugs and spend more time with boys and people that weren't so good for me. So senior year, I had a boyfriend, and I moved in with him. And I had been ditching school a lot at this point, and was doing a lot of cocaine and drinking a lot, taking pills, what have you. And I got admitted to the psych ward. I had been awake for a couple weeks, and I called my mom. I went home and I called my mom, and I asked her to come home and brush my hair. And for a parent who hasn't heard from her kid in a long time, that was kind of a weird phone call. So she came straight home from her office and took me straight to the UCLA psych ward. I like to say that I went into the psych ward with a PhD and I came out with an MD. When I was in there, I met some kids that set me up with a crystal meth dealer. I had crystal meth brought to me while I was in there, and I was awake for maybe 13 of the 25 days I was in there. And the day I got out of there, I ran away. And a few weeks after that, I was posted as a missing person and lost on the streets, homeless, no phone, no food, no money. I would say I was out there about a month. I eventually was found by some detectives in Culver City. They took me home. I fell asleep for 20 hours or so, and then was taken to a wilderness program in Atlanta, Georgia. That program changed my life. Didn't keep me sober, but it changed my life. I learned a lot of things in that program. It humbled me, and I wasn't allowed to come back to LA after that program. I went to Boston. I went to school for a little bit. I was admitted to another psych ward there. Then I went to school and eventually came home to LA because I had relapsed. Came home to LA and I immediately started working. I still was smoking weed and using cocaine and drinking, but I was functional. I had a couple great jobs, and then a couple years after that, I was in another psych ward. I turned 21 in a psych ward. The reason I got sent to psych wards was because when I do drugs, I do them until I lose my mind. I think that drugs make you lose your mind, but some people kind of say, hey, I've been awake for 3 days and I'm not feeling well, maybe I'll stop. And I think that's the difference between an addict and a non-addict. Addicts are chemically dependent. They need the drug to feel normal. Even when they feel so abnormal, they do it into the point where they lose their mind. And I had manic, psychotic breakdowns. I was not functioning in reality, and I was diagnosed with bipolar at the age of 18. I continued to be on psych meds through the age 21. I got out of that psych ward at 21, was sober for maybe 8 months, and then relapsed again. And I was also under conservatorship by the courts, deeming my mom responsible for food, clothing, and shelter. That was really hard, not having my license and a car. I gained a lot of weight. I really lost my identity that time. Once again, after that 8 months of sobriety, I relapsed. I got jobs, I sort of got my life back together, but I didn't stay sober. I never really worked a program. I had sponsors and I went to meetings, but I didn't really work the steps, but I also didn't really want to be sober. There was always this little voice in the back of my head saying, you're going to use again, you're going to drink, just wait till everyone's off your back and then you can escape again. A few more years went by, got a lot of great jobs, got certified as a spin instructor, taught a lot of fitness classes, worked as a manager in a lot of fitness clubs, and started using again. I think I'd never really found out who I was. And drugs offered me an opportunity to feel comfortable in my skin, despite the fact that I was escaping who I really was. And eventually, fast forward to about 6 months ago, I felt like I was on the brink of losing my mind again. I was drinking and I was using, and I was on psych meds, and I knew that I couldn't get balanced. I was always okay to take psych meds if I needed them, but I could never get balanced because I was using on the psych meds, and I just knew that that wasn't a good thing. So I took every ounce of my energy and I drove myself to treatment, and I surrendered, and I agreed to take direction from anyone who wanted to give it to me. I made a couple phone calls and got some feedback. Maybe you'll go here, maybe you'll go there. And then I got one last phone call, said there's a bed open. And so I went, and that was the best decision I ever made. I honestly thought that I would live the rest of my life using drugs, that I would never go one day without a drink of alcohol, a little bit of cocaine, a pill, something, anything. I always knew in the back of my heart that I had the ability to live sober. I just didn't know how. A lot of soul searching needed to be done. A lot of therapy I obviously needed, but I didn't want to admit that I needed. And honestly, when I got to treatment, I didn't know if I was going to last, but I gave myself the chance. And I don't know, it makes me emotional to think about it, but the truth of the matter is that I surrendered once and for all, and I was willing to do whatever it takes to at least give myself a chance. I don't think I ever would have made it this far if I hadn't sunk so low. So unfortunately, I do believe that people have to hit a rock bottom. I don't believe they have to hit it more than once. They don't always get more than one chance, but I was lucky enough to survive long enough to take myself to treatment. I work in treatment now, which is a dream come true, and every single day I get to talk to people that stayed sober after treatment. Gives me hope. I get to be of service to girls that I live with, which is great. But my future is never drinking or using again. I never thought that I would want a life free of those things. I honestly thought I would use drugs for the rest of my life. And I honestly thought I'd be on psych meds for the rest of my life. And now I know that with a little green tea and a lot of water and some good food and a great exercise, that I can live the life I wanted. And the future, I hope, holds healthy relationships. I obviously want to have a family and kids one day. I know that's a far off concept for me, but I have dreams just like everybody else. And just trying to live one day at a time. And the word future just has such a deep thing for me, because my future used to just be the night ahead and hoping that I wake up in the morning, or not hoping that I wake up in the morning. Sometimes I didn't want to wake up the next morning, and now I can't wait to wake up every morning.